Remember this meme? Well, something similar happened recently to Mr. Mike after Solomon Nelson put up a 1 hour long video discussing Mike's PhD dissertation that looks more like something that you would get an F for in elementary school rather than an actual PhD dissertation. And everybody started questioning, should his doctorate be revoked? What should happen now? Oh, he was a fraud all along. And I think something that is really funny, I'm not really going to talk about this. Something really funny is that people just started realizing this now, or like a year ago. I think about a year or maybe 2 years ago, it started as everybody started being like, well, this video from Mike was bad, but we usually like him. Or, well, he's starting to get a little bit off. And then everybody paints the whole thing as he got more and more successful, and therefore he got more and more corrupt. And somehow he just got worse with fame, but that is not true at all. His advice has always been shit. Yeah, sure, he started using a lot more clickbait and being, having a lot more hot takes as he got more famous because he wanted even more fame and money. But his advice has never been good. And this is something that nobody acknowledges somehow, and this is something that I would really like to hear from people like GVS, why he used to be such a fan of him, because I know that he was, like, he did talk good about them, even though their training method never aligned. And the same thing is true with all of the other more famous, bigger natural YouTubers. All of them have seemed to talk very favorably about Mr. Mike. Just maybe the past 1 year they started talking more shittily about him because he's doing all the hot takes and the clickbait and shit. But their training philosophy has never aligned. And Mike's training philosophy has always been shit, and his training advice has always been shit. And this is what I want to talk about in this video, and this is what I'm going to prove. And this is not going to be one video, actually. Rather, it's going to be, I think, 16. It's going to be a series where I'm going to go through a playlist on Mike's channel called Hypertrophy Made Simple, where he basically outlines his entire method relatively quickly. We don't really need to listen to the 2 hour videos anyways, because this is complicated enough already, considering how he likes to program. He likes to make things really complicated. And just one important thing that I would like to say here is these videos are 5 years old. He did not turn into shit just a year or 2 years ago. He has always been shit. And I know because I tried it and it did not work. But let's talk about problems with Mike's method. First of all, what I said before, it's unnecessarily complicated. He likes to complicate things so that nobody understands it, so that you need to buy his app. It's a perfect plan, right? You make a training method that is so complicated nobody can run it themselves alone, because you would have to watch all of his content to actually understand everything. So therefore, you put out an app that people have to pay not once for, but rather pay a monthly membership for it. And then everything is good because people don't actually have to understand the method. They just have to run the app. And also, if your training method is super complicated, it sounds very intelligent and nobody will actually look into it. Just like all of these natural YouTubers never did. That is what I assume, at least. I talked once with one of them. I wrote to one of them on Instagram like, you have talked very favorably about this guy, but have you ever seen just this video series? It's full of shit, and it advocates against what you preach on your channel, and still you rated him as really good and as like he has really good programming, whereas you are complete opposites when it comes to programming. And if anybody else would do that, you would just laugh about them. And he was like, yeah, actually I didn't know it, and I gotta have to take a better look at it. So that's number one. Number two, it has zero consistency. You're not doing the same thing for a long period of time. It's not consistent. Mike's programming advocates for program hopping and deloads. Program hopping, I will tell you where it advocates for that. And then deloads, they also just tend to kind of disrupt the program, especially because Mike, for the most part, likes to program them once every month or after every 4 weeks, I think, which is, in my opinion, pretty stupid. It's like you're gonna train seriously 4 weeks or 3 weeks and then take a 1 week deload. How do you want to gain any momentum with that? Third, it's based on nothing. It is not science-based, okay? I think everybody should know it at this point. Mike has never been science-based. He is just a bro. He's just saying random shit. Just to be clear, there is nothing wrong with not being science-based. I'm not science-based. I just say random shit. I'm just a bro. But Mike's whole shtick is being science-based. He screams at the top of his lungs in every single video, I am a doctor of exercise science. And in every single title he puts exercise scientist, critiques this and that person's training and whatever. And he always says what he says is supported by science. But in reality, it's supported by nothing. It's all bro science. And there's nothing wrong with that. But he markets it with science. His method also doesn't work for naturals. It just simply doesn't. What works for naturals, and I think I made a video about this. I don't know if I already made it actually, but I'm gonna put it in the corner here. What you need to do as a natural to grow really fucking big is the same thing over a long period of time consistently. Not get it broken up by deloads and things like that. Not changing the program every single month because, oh, this exercise I didn't like or whatever. No, you need to do the exact same thing just for a really long period of time and be very consistent. And what will help you is the time. You cannot just be like, oh, for these 3 months I'm going to be super focused, and then after that I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and in these 3 months I'm going to gain as much muscle as possible. No, it doesn't actually work. What actually works is consistently gaining it, because that's how natural training works. You know who this works for, the way Mike programs his training. Steroid users. It also ignores everything important. This is the training method, and especially just, you will see this in this video, that Mike talks about everything except for what is actually important.
Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization, coming at you with the Hypertrophy Made Simple series. 16 videos so far of all of the fundamental ways in which to design hypertrophy programs and troubleshoot as quickly and to the point as possible. If you want jargon, if you want science, if you want deep explanations, what you want is the Hypertrophy Guide Central Hub on Renaissance Periodization website or any of our other longer form YouTube videos. Let's get right into it. How do you choose the exercises that you're going to be using to grow muscle growth? Well, here's the deal. How can you tell you're growing muscle?
How can you tell you're growing muscle? Easy. You measure your muscle multiple times over a long period of time, and if the measurements get bigger, you're growing muscle. If they aren't getting bigger, then you're not growing. That's how easy it is. But Mike is going to list a couple of ways that you can tell how you're growing muscle, and none of them actually work.
You can tell acutely and longitudinally in a couple of ways. Acutely, that is at the time at which you're training or right around it. If there's tension in the target muscle, that's probably going to cause growth.
That doesn't even mean anything.
If there's a burn in the target muscle from an exercise, especially in high reps, that's probably going to cause growth.
I can make you do a set of 100 reps of bicep curls, and I can guarantee you it's not going to make your biceps grow, but it's going to burn like shit.
If there's a pump in the target muscle after a few sets, that's a good sign.
Same thing here.
And if there's fatigue, disruption, and soreness in the muscle during and after, that's also a good sign something is happening that's going to lead to growth.
I can also make you really sore and you're not going to grow.
In the longer term, your repetition strength trends upwards, and that's a good sign that the muscles are getting bigger. So
the thing with rep strength going up is whenever you start doing a new exercise, for the first few weeks, your rep strength is going to go up no matter what you do. The first 4, even 6 weeks sometimes, depending on how technical the exercise is, because you're just learning the exercise and you become more efficient at doing the exercise, and therefore your rep strength gets better. On top of that, your rep strength, even after that, can be manipulated. There are so many movements where your form can just get always a little bit more skewed towards more rep strength every single time, but that doesn't mean you're actually growing. I'm pretty sure, I can start doing a squat today, and 6 months from now, maybe I've put on 100 pounds on it, and I haven't gotten any bigger, but the movement has gotten a lot stronger. You know why? Because the movement hasn't actually gotten stronger. It's just the technique that got more biased towards strength.
How do you choose exercises? Well, you want to choose exercises that do a couple of things. They cause tension and burn in the target muscle. That's a really big, important thing. So if you feel bicep curls in your bicep, that's a very good sign.
Doesn't matter.
They give you the best pumps. The ones that give you the best pumps are probably the ones you want to use more for hypertrophy.
Again, doesn't matter. And also none of this is science-based. So the exercises that give you the best tension and burn in the target muscle. I don't know about you, but for biceps, probably the best exercise is a preacher curl. And I don't feel anything when I'm doing a preacher curl. I'm just suffering, but I don't actually feel a tension and a burn in my bicep. Whereas I know for a fact that if I would just do 100 reps of concentration curls, I would feel it really well. But is it actually that much better? No, it isn't. Same with the pump.
You want to make sure that they zap your target muscle the most. So if your quads, you do some kind of leg press or hack squat, just destroys your quads, that's probably a good thing. You probably want to keep doing that exercise for a while. You want the exercise to stress your joints.
Fair enough.
The least, because that is a very sustainable thing that you can continue to train hard with. And you want...
So the fourth point is the first one that I actually agree with. But even with that, I do not agree with it actually to the fullest extent, because there are some exercises that are really stressful on your joints, but still they are good exercises and you can still do them without ruining your joints. You just have to be careful with them. JM press, one of the best examples. It is one of the best tricep exercises ever, and it is super stressful on your elbows, but that is the whole point. You start really slow with really light weight and you slowly work your way up, and eventually you're going to be able to do heavy weights, and also it's going to bulletproof your elbow.
The exercise to do this without a ton of needless generation of systemic fatigue. You don't have to work as hard. If you have two exercises, they give you the same pumps and burn and everything else, and one is pretty easy to do, the other one's just really hard to do and takes a lot out of you, the easier one is the better choice. So
first of all, how do you even measure pump and burn? It's got the same pump and burn. But anyways, I think systemic fatigue is not that important. You're not going to fatigue the shit out of yourself. Stimulus to fatigue ratio is something that Mike seems to love promoting a lot, and it doesn't actually matter that much. I pretty much never think about stimulus to fatigue ratio when I am choosing an exercise for my program, because it just doesn't really matter that much. Fatigue is not going to actually kill you.
When you're choosing exercises and you've got exercises in your plan, how do you know if you want to keep them for next month of training or take them out and replace them? Well, here's the...
Now this, you've heard this? This is a very important thing. How do you know if you're going to keep them for the next month of training or not? That should not be a question. You should always keep them for the next month of training, except if they're causing some sort of pain that cannot be fixed. But even in 1 month, like through that 1 month, you should be trying to get that pain fixed from fixing your form or something like that. And then if you can't, then you can get rid of the exercise. But why would you get rid of any exercise after a month of training? It is clearly not enough. And this is what is called program hopping, changing your program all the time. Even if you're only changing one exercise every single month, that's enough. Don't do it. If you don't need to change it, don't.
Deal. You want to keep doing exercises that give you great tension, burn, pumps, and disruption.
Means nothing.
An exercise that is easy on your joints and is worth the systemic fatigue. That is, it's really great for training relative to how much systemic fatigue it causes you, how much it wears you out. You want to keep that. That's really good. And if that exercise is steadily climbing in rep strength, that's a good thing. Awesome. Keep it. Don't change it. On the other hand, you probably...
So there are exercises that fluctuate a lot in terms of rep strength. One example could be pull-ups, just based on how much your body weight is and how you're feeling that day. Maybe you're going to be able to do less pull-ups than last week, but that doesn't mean that the next week you're not going to be able to do more. It just tends to fluctuate a lot. Same with the bench press. Sometimes you get better performance, sometimes you get worse. The overall trend is what you have to look at, and you aren't always able to look at that within just a month. And then there's another thing, exercises that are really hard to progress, like overhead press or any cable movement where you don't use a lot of weight. Maybe they don't progress for a whole month, or they just progress a little bit, but not enough so that you can actually add the rep. It's just like the last rep has become significantly easier, but you still cannot add another rep. And that doesn't mean you have to throw those exercises out after a month. It just means that they're slow at progressing. And especially when you're advanced, like Mike is supposed to be advanced. I know he's on roids, but how the fuck do you expect to put on at least one rep on everything every month? It is not possible.
We want to consider replacing an exercise with another one if that exercise no longer gives you very good tension, burn, pumps, or disruption. It's just like meh, right?
First of all, I don't understand this logic. Exercises don't just stop giving you good burns and pumps and disruption. That is not how exercising works. It doesn't just suddenly stop working. And also, even if it would be like that, it doesn't matter if it suddenly doesn't give you as good of a pump, because a pump is not indicative of growth.
Right? If it's getting tough on your joints and it zaps strength for the rest of your program, if it takes you like an hour to get through some kind of deadlift variant, it just beats you up and you can't even barely train afterward, maybe you want to replace that.
I somewhat agree with this, but it should not happen within just 1 month.
And lastly, huge one, if your strength is plateauing on exercise, especially for over the last month, there just hasn't been any gains in rep strength, it's probably a good time to switch up exercises. What this means is that some exercises
I really strongly disagree with this. If an exercise plateaus within the first month of doing it, first of all, what the fuck are you doing? How is it plateauing? The first month of doing an exercise, even if you're not getting any more muscle, you should be getting stronger just from the neurological adaptations. But even if after that it plateaus, that doesn't mean that you should change the exercise. That is not the solution. There is something else that is wrong within your program that made you plateau. But it's not the exercise that is the faulty at plateauing. It's you. You're not growing muscle. Or the exercise is just simply hard to progress. Like sometimes, let's say you have 3 different chest movements and 2 of them are progressing and 1 isn't, then who gives a shit? It's not the problem of the movement. That movement is still giving you a stimulus. It's just not progressing right now. But as long as the other 2 are progressing, just keep it in. When none of them are progressing, then it's still not going to be the exercise's fault. It's going to be the program's fault and your fault.
Rotate every other month, and some you can keep for.
And no, you should never rotate some exercises every other month. That is the perfect time. That is the worst. So let's say if every few months you rotate exercises, that makes sense because, yeah, sure, you lose out for a few weeks on the gains because of the neurological adaptations that you have to make after changing an exercise, but you have a lot of months with the same exercise after that. Or another way you can do it is how I do it. 1 week, you do one exercise. The second week, you do a very similar exercise. That is a different exercise, but similar, like a variation. 1 week, you do a hammer curl standing up. The other week, you do a hammer curl sitting down on a slight incline. Boom. And you're not going to forget that, but it is enough variation so that you don't get overuse injuries over time.
Years on end because they just continue to provide excellent results. Folks, that's the super quick and easy guide to choosing exercises. See you next time for the next video.
So the main problem with this video actually wasn't what Mike said in it, it's what Mike hasn't said in it. The problem is not whatever the fuck he was yapping about. The problem is what he wasn't talking about at all, what he didn't even mention. And you know what that is? Anything useful. Anything that matters. Mike has not had a single point in exercise selection that actually matters. So instead of him, I will give you some. First of all, does it have a good stretch? He hasn't talked about it, even though it's important. Resistance profiles. He hasn't mentioned it at all. Resistance profiles are super important. Is it lengthen biased or shorten biased? I'm not saying you always have to have movements that have a great stretch or are lengthen biased, but it is very important. The majority of your movements, in my opinion, should be lengthen biased. And Mike hasn't touched on it at all. Mike hasn't touched on the fact that a preacher curl is better than just a normal standing curl because it is lengthen biased. Then, is it time tested? He hasn't talked about it at all. Is it a movement that emerged on TikTok last month, like the fucking Greenlandic curl or something? Or is it something that people have been getting big with for decades? Is it stable? A preacher curl is stable as fuck. A barbell curl, not so much. Stability is really important. If a movement is not stable, it's not going to be as good, usually. And direct strength to muscle gain correlation, it's something that I personally care about a lot. What I mean by that is, you're getting stronger at this specific movement. Does that directly correlate to you building muscle? So basically, the better you get at the movement, you're definitely getting bigger as well. Something that doesn't work with that is, for an example, a barbell row. That's why I don't like a barbell row. Not saying that they are a bad exercise necessarily. I know some people like them who have great backs. I personally don't like them because of that reason. But back training overall just tends to be like that a lot. But, you know, a movement that has direct strength to muscle gain correlation is something like a cable tricep extension. When you get stronger on that, your tricep is going to get bigger. There is really pretty much no way on cheating on it so much that it would actually matter. You cannot just magically get stronger on it without getting bigger triceps. It is not possible. The same with a preacher curl. Even if you cheat on a preacher curl, it is still going to be very efficient at getting your muscle bigger as long as the movement itself gets stronger. A reason why this video is shit and why these criteria don't matter at all that Mike gave is that if I were to listen to him, my best number one tricep exercise would be tricep kickbacks. That everybody knows is a shit exercise and doesn't actually work well for the long head of your triceps. And that's why guess what? I'm not doing that exercise. But if I were to go according to Mike's guidelines, as I used to in the past, I would do it as I used to in the past. And did it work? Obviously it didn't. And you can try it. It's not going to work for you either, because these criteria don't matter. The criteria that I just gave you, they do matter. Has Mike talked about any of them? No. And there's the problem. So I'm going to make a separate video for all of the videos in this playlist. There are 16 of them. I think the second and the third one are relatively okay, and then after that we're going to get into the shit again. So yeah, that's it, and if you want to see more, you can just click here.